Hey guys, Akariss here, bringing you a brand new Fire Emblem Heroes video. So today's video, as you no doubt have read from the title, maybe the thumbnail, we're covering the CYL weapon refines. And oh boy, there's lots to talk about. I'm not going to go into like super full detail this video because honestly, if I was, then this video would probably be about an hour long. So I'm just going to give you my thoughts on all the weapon refines. I'm going to give you some sample builds like I always do, and then where you want to use those particular builds or units going forward. Now, the more extensive stuff, you're going to have to math out. I suggest using a simulator. I do sim a lot of this stuff myself, but if I was to, again, spend so much time simming, this video would go on for like ever. So yeah, let's jump into it. And like TLDR, the whole video is they're all really good, but some definitely stand out more than others, and that's going to be what we're talking about here. So with that being said, first up is Garm off of Brave Ephraim's Weapon Refine. This one is, well, it's good if you look at it standalone, but if you compare it to a lot of other stuff, it's not the best of all time. So essentially, he kind of keeps his base effect. The bonus to activate the extra weapon attack, like the extra follow-up, is pretty easy to meet. You can meet it with Armored Stride, Armored March, Ground Orders, obviously just buffs themselves. There's plenty of like activations you can do to get that effect. It is, like a lot of these effects with follow-ups, they're all hard countered by null follow-up, and since they're armors, it does mean they usually don't win speed checks. So null follow-up will beat weapon refines like this, but nonetheless, if there's no null follow-up on your enemy, it will be very good. And it also it's kind of like mini null follow-up. It beats breakers and it beats impact skills, and that's pretty good. So the base effect is solid. It's been upgraded. The secondary effect is I'd say it's pretty underwhelming. It's just like 5 to all stats, pretty much all the time met, because like the HP condition is very high, and some extra healing. And the healing does help to make him like a tank unit and to keep him within that HP threshold. But when we get into the other refines, you'll see that this one isn't exactly as amazing as the other ones. It's still really good, but it's not like as good as some of the other stuff here. So moving on, we got Celica's weapon. Celica's weapon is, I'd say, probably not talked about enough. I would say out of all these refines. The thing is, the way I see Celica is like Celica is now pretty much like Elwood or Roy from last year. This is a really good refine, like weapon base effect and refine now. But the thing is, it's not on a like free unit like Elwood or like a 3-4 star unit. Elwood getting the refine was huge. I don't think most people have Celica. She's probably been foddered by DB4 or Gale Force by now, so I really don't see her like, you know, like you're probably not gonna see her that often. But the people who have this or have like a merged Celica are going to be in a really good spot, and I think especially for AR defense or possibly AR offense, and you'll see in some of the builds later, this is huge. This is a very good weapon for a lot of specials, really good synergy with stuff like Gale Force, and even counters Pulse Smoke, and that's huge. Pulse Smoke counters a lot of Gale Force when you were trying to use like Gale Force on defense, and now that's really big because Celica is a good counter unit to that. Her stat spread has always been mostly offensive, and that complements this refine really well. The extra HP gained is not that important, but if you do want to run maybe a Celica tank build, it's not terrible, I guess. She does get a bunch of stats, she gets special acceleration, and like the condition is not only player phase, like it can be just as long as you're with nearby friends. So honestly, not too bad. I'd say this is probably like the sleeper refine. Moving on, we got Veronica's refine. I think most people expect this one to be crazy. Honestly, I don't think it's that amazing. It kept the base effect the same. Nothing changed there. You attack, you buff your friends, and debuff your enemies. That doesn't always end up being a benefit, believe it or not, because a lot of units don't care about debuffs anymore or reverse them. And the buffs can be detrimental if your units are panicked. So believe it or not, that base effect can actually be negative to you sometimes. But the secondary effect, the refine is big. That one's good, really good. So it's like kind of a goad, but within like 3 range for everyone, and then like a lull on defense and res for anyone within 3 spaces. The 3 spaces thing is what's huge, okay? So like most units are going to benefit from this, the refine effect. It's just a shame because the base effect is not as good as it may seem, and that's where like it's really lacking here. But the refine is really good. It's unique to her, and honestly, it doesn't require like a buff or anything like that, so it makes a really good She's basically better at what she already did, and like very competitive with a lot of other staffs. I do hope that this is a precedent for future staff refines to come. They're not that oppressive. Like there are definitely arguments to be made for like Palm Staff, Panic, Gravity, you know, Flash as better staffs than this. It really is arguments for that. I really don't think this is like, oh my god, gonna break the game type of refine. So we really should start seeing other staff refines. Oh boy. What is this? How did this even happen? And then like why does Ephraim not get this is like even more crazier. So oh, where do I even start with this? Okay, so the biggest problem with armors is mobility. We have Brave armors, mobility, and the fact that they're armored. Okay, those are two huge weaknesses that armors have. So what do? Brave Edelgard happens, and all of a sudden you have an armor with huge mobility. So she's good because she takes care of one of those weaknesses. She's still in armor. That's still a problem, but it's not as bad as it could be. Now here's the other spectrum. Okay, so you still have your armor mobility problems, but you also get no armor. You are not an armor anymore. So essentially, now Brave Hector is a one movement blue lance infantry, essentially. He has no armor weakness. He neutralizes penalties, so he's like Brunia, he's like a Thune now. He's also more common because of like the Hero Fest we've had, and maybe from Legendary banners you might have picked up. He's got Slaying, he has a guaranteed follow-up. He like removes, not lulls, but like he debuffs people on attack and defense, which is huge. It's a very easy condition to make, and they cannot double him. What do you mean you put all of this in a weapon? This is, I don't overreact to a lot of stuff, but this is actually really, really, really powerful. I think over budgeted, overstacked. I don't see why this is still here. Like Brave Ikes was like the great carry refine of last year. This is the great carry refine of this year. Hector got overblown. Don't forget that he also has that improved distant counter. So he gets an extra 4 attack and 4 defense that other distant counter users don't get. So this is like, yeah, this is really good. This is by far the best refine of this batch, hands down. There's so many things that make this good. Neutralizing penalties, Slaying, not an armor. So the only thing that makes like him bad now, if you want to call it bad, is like he's blue and he has 1 movement. And you can work around those things. You couldn't work around all of the fact plus an armor. Like the old armors, this is like the new age of armors. The old armors had too many problems to make functional. You had to work around all those problems. Now, I'm just not an armor. I just move 1. That's okay. Here's my guidance or armor march friend over there carrying me on my back. Like, it's no big deal. Ground orders? Sure, why not? I'll just fly over across the map. My name's Brave Edelgard, right? So, yeah, they're not armors anymore. That's pretty cool, right? Alright, so we're gonna start with Brave Ephraim. Hector is he's gonna get his own time at the end of this video. But basically, if you want to remind yourself what the refines do, just look under me. That's where I'm gonna put them. Let's start with Ephraim. Believe it or not, Ephraim is still really good. Despite Hector's refine being as good as it is, Ephraim's is still solid. The dude can now run something like Ether here with Special Fighter. Armored Stride self-activates Garm, so he almost always has that active. And Speed Res solo with Garm actually makes him fairly speedy. Like with some support, he easily can reach 40-50 speed. He's got auto follow-ups, and he's got that healing. So yeah, it's not bad. It's not actually too bad. I do see Ephraim as being a good alternative unit. He's got good attack stat. He's got his auto follow-ups. But realistically, at the end of the day, that's all he's got. He's got some healing. Alright, another way you can definitely use him is the Gale Force strat. He can use Heavy Blade and Wings of Mercy without actually worrying about having to use like a fighter skill like Bold or Special Fighter, like, because he's just got really good attack. He can definitely follow up with Wings of Mercy, so you can throw him into a like a Gale Force strategy, Air Force for instance, and he'll function just fine there. And then because of his high bulk, you can also enter against a lot of strategies. That's pretty much the extent of where I see Ephraim being right now. He's not bad, don't get me wrong, but like it's just underwhelming when you compare the different types of refines, like why he wasn't as amazing, I guess. But anyways, moving on, Celica. So Celica, As I said, makes a really good Gale Force unit now because of her weapon. Essentially, if she just gets one pulse here, just one infantry pulse, and you can do that off like an Asker Trio, or anyone else really, like Asker Trio bonus makes sense. She's going to have a very consistent 2-charge Gale Force. I believe it's 3 actually. It's 3 here, but after combat, as long as you've hit once, she gets that free special acceleration, and then after combat, Royal Sword will bring her down to activated Gale Force. So you don't have to pulse her as hard. You can also use like Times Pulse instead of having Infantry Pulse, or if you don't want to use Quick Impulse, you want to give it to somebody else, Times Pulse is also another solution. But this is generally just like almost base kit. Like if you just have a Celica rolling around in your barracks, this is actually just solid for pretty much base kit. Like it works without having to put a lot of investment into it, which makes her kind of cool. She's definitely a solid option now without even having to go, you know, further into your barracks. Moving on, if you actually wanted to use Royal Lion, you can throw her into like Astra Season and maybe have her be the initial follow-up so she can pick off 2 units pretty easily, you know. If you have like a Dancer with her and Astra, she can almost take out like 2 or 3 units just by herself. And maybe if you're using like Altina also, you may have her maybe also snipe a kill, or maybe end turn and leave up some weak units. I don't think this is as great as Air Force, of course. And of course, some Gale Force strategies can be pretty inconsistent, but generally this weapon does really work well with Gale Force. Finally, on enemy, on like air defense, this is a definite good place I could see her in. She can use impact skills in A, so unlike Blazing Durandal of Elwood and Roy, it doesn't have built-in impact, but she can use impacts in the A skill, so pretty much what you got is special acceleration in her sword with that charge after combat, and she's not countered by pulse smoke. So you can set up like a rally trap with her, like ground orders. She goes in, you know, 3 spaces off of ground orders from someone diagonally from her, rallies them, gets danced, and can create like a lunge, hardy bearing, Gale Force strategy. This really lends itself well to infantry pulse teams or mixed team comps that pretty much can enable her with ground orders to hop in and destroy things. Very offensive, very competitive with someone like Elwood for a red sword. I think one of the better red sword units for sure. Okay, and next up is Veronica. Now, Veronica, this is like, again, the budget build. I don't expect everyone to really have +10s, but definitely all these builds can be up to +10, and that will really make them shine. Again, if you have like a low merge Veronica, she ends up being decent on Cavline. I don't want to say the best option because, like I said, Palm Staff is still super strong. Panic is still super strong. So if you want to use Veronica on something like a Cavline, she will be a good option, but her low-ish bulk compared to some of the other more recent Cavs will definitely hurt her. Her staff doesn't increase her bulk. It makes her better at sniping enemy units. And yeah, in this case, she's going to have like almost 51 speed and almost like 54, 57 attack or so post combat. She's also going to debuff and buff herself to all the enemies nearby. So realistically, yeah, she's really offensive, but you don't always want offensive. You want some bulk, especially on cav lines where they're keen on trying to snipe support units in the back. Sniping Altina, Naga, the light mythics, those are the key targets for a cav line to try to snipe. So I'm not sure on a low merge Veronica. I don't necessarily think I would say that she's better than all Cavs, but she's definitely one of the most offensive ones, and that's important. Now, recently, we did also get Ard Attack Speed. So what do? You put that on the most offensive Cav, because like, let's say healer Cav. Put that on her, make her double down on her role as basically a giant nuke. And what you have here is like a 70 attack, colorless, 3-move ranged unit. That is actually insane, okay? There's not that many units. You pretty much need like a TA Raven to survive this. There's so much speed, so much attack, and her HP stat is just ideal to dodge some tactics rooms. You can also do this, of course, on restore comps, mixed team comps, and Veronica becomes one of the most annoying units to deal with. But at the end of the day, she's not that bulky and can be easily sniped, along with Panic being a big weakness to her weapon after combat. So she's not exactly like the perfect unit, but she's going to be really annoying to deal with, and you're going to have to consider her for sure. Oh boy, alright. Let's go, guys. Let's go. There is tons to talk about here. Now, Pulse Smoke and Special Fighter, those are definitely more premium stuff. I think Special Fighter is key to making Vector work, Pulse Smoke, you're not necessarily going to need it, but it's very nice to have, especially to double down on how he is as a unit as like an Omega tank. Okay, so Special Fighter with his slaying weapon really lends well to using like Soul. He gets healing every combat. You could also use Noontime if you're afraid of units doing special denial. For example, Elwood, like if you're worried about that, or more units like Guard, or having the special denial on enemy teams start happening, he can switch over to Noontime and still get his healing almost every combat. Now you might wonder why bother with QR when you look at his weapon having all those like follow-ups and denying follow-up effects. So his stuff is still hard countered by null follow-up, and that will hurt him. Null follow-up, I'd say young Merrick, the young version of Merrick is his biggest hard counter, but that is such a rare unit that you don't always need to worry about it. And even that has a counter, believe it or not. As long as he's not running Wind Sweep. Hector has problems, chat. Like, it's not exactly, he's not perfect. He's still weak to Dazzle, he's still weak to Fire Sweep, and he's still weak to null follow-up. So despite all the effects he has on his weapons, he's not perfect, but he's really good against most team comps that don't consider that stuff. So QR is for impact effects. Impact isn't completely denied. It ends up being like a speed check with him. So if you run QR, he gets his guaranteed double. And with his guaranteed double, he kills almost everything. It has to be like a very green, bulky unit to not die. And believe it or not, there is. Python. Python will give him a hard time. So, or even like some defense stack Thrasiers will give him a hard time. And those units getting danced could be detrimental to his success. Moving on though, this is what you do should he end up being like those particular matchups. In Astro Season, if you see those units, you can actually just run the Bonfire build. With the Bonfire build, he has so much defense given to him that he can literally just nuke those units with Bonfire. Now this build is definitely weak to just combat that keeps happening over and over. Like his sustain isn't there, and therefore he can get whittled down and die. But most team comps will not be able to survive that Bonfire, and he will be able to just brute force through most threats, and then with like some HP remaining, you'll be able to close out the deal. Alright, and finally, the penultimate version of Hector. I had to just show it for the sake of showing it, but essentially, yeah, this is what this is. Same as the first build, but look at those juicy stats. The dude will try to get as many kills just by the nature of having a high attack stat. Remember that Fear Stance could be pretty good. Don't always get stuck on like QR, especially if you're trying to go for one-shots. In fact, here, it could be argued that Mirror Stance, Fear Stance, or even Sturdy Stance could be really good to use here, just so he can secure kills more often and heal more off of that. But do be aware that he is weaker to impact skills. Alright, and if you truly didn't believe how ridiculous Hector was, I gotta show you guys my one and most important simulation. This is Hector +1 summoner supported versus Thrasier. And this is a Thrasier with Swift Sparrow. This is a Thrasier that has her Flashing Blade built in, Killing Intent activated. He wins. He wins consistently. Bonfire will absolutely destroy her, and he doesn't take like almost any damage. In this case, I don't even think he's using Bonfire. I think he just kills with Soul. So just by using like Fear Stance, Sturdy Stance, or Mirror Stance, just with some support behind like Corrin giving him 8 attack, you're going to secure kills with a +1 Vector against one of the most omnipresent threats on Astra. That'll be how I conclude this. If you don't have a good tank, or thinking that your tank is fairly unreliable, considering there's a Thrasier bonus coming up right now in AR, you may want to try out your Hector if he's in the barracks. I'm definitely considering it. With that being said, guys, I'll see you guys in the next one. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Give the video a thumbs up. I will see you guys in the next one. Much love.